Hey, what is up, my YouTube and subscribers? Security here to review RWBY Volume 5, Chapter 1, Welcome to Haven. Now, I'm gonna spoil the shit out of this episode, so if you wanna wait, if you're not a first member like me, just wait to watch the review. I'll give you a brief summary. It's good. Honestly, it's the best volume since Monty's death. When Monty died, the series took kind of a downward turn with a major tonal shift. It seems to me that the writing staff knows what they're doing now, and like they always knew what they're doing. The writing, animation, and voice acting all have gotten exceptionally better since Volume 3. That being said, it's a good chapter. I think it's where Volume 4 should have opened up. I honestly believe that Volume 5 should be Volume 4, because I think that the time skip was kind of worthless, other than learning about the Spring Maiden, or not, the maidens in general, along with the artifacts underneath each of the schools. That being said, let's go on to Chapter 1, Volume 5, Welcome to Haven. Now it opens up where Volume 4 left off. The group is going to Haven Academy to meet up with Lionheart. We see how Haven is basically built on a mountain, and essentially it's a lot like Coruscant from Star Wars. The higher up you get, the more pristine, the nicer it looks. That being said, as you go lower into the mountains, you get into the lower on the mountain, you get into the scummy parts of the city. You get to the parts where there's illegal weapons trade, and Crow heavily implies when we're introduced to Haven that there is stuff illegally happening here, that people are selling other people's stuff that they shouldn't be selling. So we learn a bit about Haven, how it's operated. We then cut over to Haven Academy, where it's very, very quiet. There's no students, no staff, and Crow immediately senses that something's wrong. So they go to Lionheart's office, where one of the major issues of this chapter comes along. Crow is used as a slapstick comedy when he's not drunk. Essentially, what happens is Crow and Team Ranger are about to kick the door down into Lionheart's office when Lionheart opens the door and the two scare each other. Crow falls onto his back. Lionheart falls onto his back. Yeah. Was that necessary? Probably not. At least from Crow's side, I'd have been fine with Lionheart falling over, but Crow's a trained huntsman. He shouldn't get startled by something as simple as a door opening. Next up, we have probably the bulk of this episode. We have the meat of this episode, essentially, which is like a 5 to 10 minute monologue, or a 5 to 10 minute dialogue back and forth between Crow and Lionheart. Essentially, what happens is Crow reveals he knows that Raven Bronwyn has the Spring Maiden. Now we know that from Volume 4, Chapter 5, I believe it was, where Crow and Raven have their discussion. Probably the best thing about Volume 4, in my opinion, was finally we get to see Raven's ideology and why she would leave Yang. That being said, we get that. We get that monologue. We get that open. We learn where. Well, we don't learn where Raven's located. We learn that Crow knows where Raven's band of bandits is. Basically, then Lionheart pulls stuff out of his ass. Essentially, what happens is Lionheart doesn't want to go because Team Witch needs to go after the Spring Maiden before Crow and company go after him. Lionheart pulls a lot of shit out of his ass. He essentially says that because of Ironwood locking down first the dust embargo, then locking down the borders, Haven's not in good shape. Mistral's not in good shape. That they have the biggest expansive country, and that it's very, very difficult for huntsmen to control it. He then says that the Mistral, or the Haven Council won't let a group of huntsmen go after a group of bandits. Essentially, that there's more pressing matters for that than a group of bandits, for them, than a group of bandits. Crow then says, then we should go after it alone. We should go. You, and Team Ranger are more than enough to handle a group of bandits. Lionheart then pulls more shit out of his ass by saying, "I'm old. I'm old and I can't fight, and you'll have to fight Raven alone because she's gonna match you blow for blow." We then the group leaves. The group after that, after Crow finally gives up, the group leaves. We learn that Watt was listening to the entire conversation. I can't wait. I hope Jean. I hope when someone finds out that guy's a traitor, man. I can't wait for that moment. Lionheart, the cowardly lion, essentially, he's very like. Basically, he let Cinder and company into fucking Beacon. All of Beacon's fall lands squarely on Lionheart's shoulders. That's what I'm getting out of this conversation right here with Watt, with Crow, with Lionheart. We then jump cut over to where Volume 4, Chapter 14 left off with Crow drinking, and then it's one for one what happened at the end of that volume. Oscar Pine walks up, says he wants back his cane. Crow says, "Welcome back, Oz." But then that scene's expanded upon. Basically, what happens is Oscar goes to the apartment or the hotel where Team Ranger is staying. Says he wants to talk to Ruby. The group gets defensive about him going after Ruby because they don't know this kid. What happened with Tyrion is probably still fresh on their mind, so they're like, "Why?" And then Crow rolls up, drunk out of his mind, making a fool of himself, saying he found him, and then he falls onto the couch. Ruby comes out of her room, yelling at Crow, "What, can a girl just read her comic books in peace? Uncle or Crow, are you drunk?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Yeah, I love Drunko Crow." Honestly, this almost feels like a Rick and Morty type of exchange between Ruby and, obviously very, very toned down from Rick and Morty. It's like a kid version of Rick and Morty, a kid-friendly version of Rick and Morty, and it's awesome. It's then revealed to the rest of the group that Ozpin is through the line that he introduced himself to Ruby with, "Oh, Ruby Rose, you have silver eyes." He essentially reveals himself to be Ozpin to the group, and that's where the Ruby side of the story, the Ranger side of the story ends. Let's go to Blake. Blake essentially has 2 minutes of the episode where it's revealed that Ilya took the fall for Krennic and Finnick, I believe, the wolf faunuses from Volume 4. She's taking the blame as a rogue White Fang member who's accepted Adam's way of thinking. And then Elias warns Blake that whatever she's planning isn't gonna work. And then Blake replies with, "Well, if you want me to leave, you're gonna have to force me to leave." Elias says, "Yeah, I know." And then that's it for Blake. Weiss's side, Weiss is still flying to Haven, which to me means that Weiss is probably gonna end up with Team Ranger faster than anyone else. Essentially, what happens is Weiss is still flying to Haven. There's what's it called? There's an attack, a Grim attack on another ship. The pilot refuses to go and help, and then we go to Yang. Now, Yang is the biggest issue with this chapter. Yang, essentially, what happens is Yang is revealed to be. It opens up in a bar, and the bartender's like, "Aren't you a little young to be drinking?" And Yang goes, "Yeah, I know. Water." She drinks her water. A guy's trying to make a pass on her, and she punches him out. Now, this is another issue with the episode, just in terms of the random tones that they use. Sometimes they use a strictly serious tone. Other times you have Yang punch a guy so hard that he bounces 30 times and then out the door. I would have been fine if she had hit him and then he flew out the door. That would have been cool. But what happens is like out of a Bugs Bunny cartoon. He goes boom, 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 and then out the door. I had the reaction where I'm like, "Oh, that's stupid." That's one of the dumbest things I've seen in RWBY. I love RWBY, don't get me wrong, but that was one of the most retarded things, or I shouldn't even say that. That was one of the dumbest things ever. Okay? It's then revealed that Yang is, and then it's revealed that Yang is going after Raven Bronwyn. And I'm like, wait, hold on. Because I had watched the Yang character short before I watched Welcome to Haven, my reaction was, what? Basically, the Yang character short builds up that relationship, the Mama Yang type of relationship, where Yang is basically training RWBY to fist fight because she won't always have Chris and Rose. It's then revealed when RWBY freezes up, fighting a Grim with her fists, that Yang will never leave RWBY. And the PTSD caused her to break that vow that she'll always be there for RWBY. So I was like, oh, it's obvious she's going after RWBY. Nope, she's going after her mom. And I get it. It makes sense because eventually something's going to happen. I'm willing to bet somehow, some way, they're going to learn Lionheart's a traitor and they're going to have to go after freaking Raven Bronwyn's faction to help her save the Spring Maiden. That's, in my opinion, what's going to happen. I don't know, like, I'm operating on one chapter, but we get enough information that I'm willing to bet 99% bet that, yeah, that's why Yang is going after Raven, not because of anything, but because it doesn't freaking in order to get her into the location she needs to be to reunite with RWBY. Instead of just having her reunite in Haven, I don't know. To me, it just doesn't make sense that she'd be going after Raven. To me, I thought, she's gonna go after RWBY. They're gonna reunite with RWBY, and then RWBY and Yang are gonna reunite together with Raven. Nope. And to me, yeah. So, what are my thoughts overall on this episode? I thought it was good. Like I said earlier, it's a really, really well written episode. I think that the Drunkle Crow, I thought that like I said, when I have one issue with the episode, which is Yang's storyline, it's a good series. It's a good episode. It's honestly, to me, had this episode been Volume 4's opening, I think a lot of people would have just fell in love with RWBY, would have loved the new tone, would have loved the new art style and everything. Instead, what we got was a volume, pretty much a